Welcome to this episode of the Public Works Podcast with our special guest today, Ryan Chamberlain, the CEO of the Transportation Corridor Agencies, or the toll roads as it's known here in Southern California. This episode is more than just about transportation. It's about building careers, systems, and impacts in this industry. We'll learn about Ryan's journey, reflect on how today's infrastructure professionals don't just build roads, they build opportunities, innovation, communities, and the future of mobility. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Public Works Podcast. We hope you enjoy this episode and be sure to share, like, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of the Public Works Podcast. I'm your host, Shane Silsby. We're here today with Ryan Chamberlain. Thanks so much for being on the show and taking time. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
You're a busy guy. We're here on a Friday taking in what's happening at TCA. You'll hear we'll say probably the toll roads or transportation corridor agencies, some interchangeable language there for the agency. But we'll jump in. Ryan, you want to tell us a little bit about your career journey? You've got an interesting pathway and you've been in engineering field, but maybe not started in engineering, public, pseudo-public, all of that. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, Shane, I appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me to participate in the podcast. It's a pleasure. So looking forward to seeing how this goes. Short version, I work with a lot of engineers along with planners and administrative staff and the like, but I am not a licensed engineer. So some people always get that a little bit confused with me. I graduated from UCSB in Santa Barbara, started a career working for the city of Santa Barbara as an intern, public works. And it was just what was available at the time. My degree was in environmental science, environmental planning up there. I wanted to stay in Santa Barbara, beautiful Central Coast. So you can understand why I wanted to be up there, but the jobs simply weren't there. So when I graduated from Santa Barbara, essentially just chasing jobs and probably sent out 80 to 100 resumes, just fielded everything from working in London to East Coast to Central US. Didn't get a lot of feedback back. Very hard to land jobs at that point in time. And it was through a friend of the family that I landed my first job out of college, which was vertical construction, doing the CEQA compliance, environmental compliance, some noise modeling, traffic modeling and the like. So I got my first sample of what this sector looks like under that space. Didn't have benefits, so was there for a short period of time and was still looking for opportunities to have a more professional job with some benefits. Really appreciated for that first initial employment opportunity, but was able to link up with a company in Orange, Parsons, Brinkerhoff, Quaid, and Douglas. And at the time, they had a lot of work. They were doing stuff like Irvine Guideway and Centerline, early high-speed rail feasibility studies, some transportation interchange projects, Nason Road, and some others. And I was able to get on with them, do some environmental compliance, CEQA, NEPA, still some noise modeling and some Esri GIS stuff for them. Really enjoyed my time there. Fit me really well. I'm a personally driven individual and working in the private sector. That's what you need for success. Enjoyed that opportunity, was there for about a year and a half. And when the workload starts to dry up, companies start to ask you, the good employees, hey, we still want to keep you, but you want to move to Arizona, Hawaii, or elsewhere. And they did ask me if I wanted to take them up on that opportunity. Little personal story, I had a girlfriend that we didn't stay together. She is not my wife, but I had a girlfriend at the time. And I said, hey, we have an opportunity to move to Hawaii or Arizona. Do you want to come? And she said, absolutely not. So that was a pivotal moment in my career where I had to think about, what do I do? I was born and raised in Southern California. I had to think long and hard about my career and this opportunity in life where, if I'm going to take some risks, let's do it when I'm young. So I took a look at opportunities on the public side of things. When I say public side, I was looking at local municipality, city, county, and also state. At the time, Caltrans was hiring, and they were hiring like crazy for environmental planners and engineers. And I ended up taking an opportunity with them in LA County in their District 7 office doing local assistance stuff. It was a big change for me. Born and raised in Orange County, I never thought that I would be a public sector employee, but I knew that Caltrans had a really great training program. I knew they had a lot of opportunity throughout the state. And my mindset at that point in time was, I'm going to go over there for 2 to 4 years, maximize that opportunity, train, meet people, understand their process and procedures, and then I'll end up back in private sector and leverage that.
Sure.
It just happened to be that about every 2 to 4 years, when I was thinking about or got the itch to leave and go somewhere else, Caltrans would offer a promotion or an acting assignment or some new opportunity that stimulated me. It also allowed me to move around the state. So I worked in Orange and LA County and Sacramento and got to travel just about on every inch of the state of California working for them, which was a great opportunity. Same time, working for Caltrans through my leadership career, I had an opportunity to sit on boards of directors like what we have here at TCA or the Metrolink board, for example, even the OCTA, Orange County Transportation Authority's board of directors. So it gave me that opportunity to see that side of the transportation space as well. So when opportunities arise, when it was about time, 22 years later at Caltrans, that an opportunity like this at TCA came up, always had my eye on working for an agency or agencies that are in the tolling space. And opportunity came up and my boards of directors currently took a risk on me. So that's how I ended up here. That's the short version of 22 years or 25, 26 years in this industry now.
Yeah, that's a great path. And the board did not take a risk on you, Ryan. You got a great resume and you did a lot of things across the state. What did you think your career would look like early on versus the role you're sitting in today?
That's a great question. When you're young, you think you know everything.
Sure.
And certainly when I graduated college and got the second job, my vision was work hard, learn every day. That was my dad's mindset when he raised my brother and I. And I thought that I would end up and eventually be in the private sector at a leadership or management level, certainly. Always thought I'd be on the proposal side of things, winning work, winning jobs. And the aspirational goal back then when I was young was learn as much as I can, even understand how to operate and run the company itself, financing and the budgeting. And towards the tail end of my career, the vision was maybe I start my own consulting company up with a couple valuable partners and you find a niche and have some successes there. Things change throughout life. One thing's for sure is change is constant. We all know this. So I mentioned my transition from private sector to Caltrans, right? It was me making a life decision. Do I stay here or do I move? There's a lot of those throughout my career. And you mentioned different career paths, and my education background is environmental studies and sciences. A lot of transportation planning, but I had the opportunity to do traffic modeling, to do long-range forecasting, to do systems planning, intergovernmental review, local development review. I had my hands in a lot of those things, which I always referred to on the planning side as tip of the spear. And I think I was afforded an opportunity and I took some risks in not just thinking about the vertical career path, right? I'm in this company and here's the opportunity I have within this one agency or one company. But how do you look laterally to see if your career path can take different turns, right? So for me, I started in environmental planning, went to transportation planning, and went to Sacramento for work, went to Orange County and District 7 in LA for work, moved around a lot, absorbed all of it, learned every day. Even dabbled with the policy stuff, went out for my tenure and my time in Sacramento running. I was the chief deputy director in Sacramento running the organization just below the director, 20,000 plus employees under me. And a lot of that work was budget and working with Department of Finance and Legislative Analyst's Office and the Governor's Office. So I got to see a lot of the policy stuff behind what we do in transportation. My point of this whole comment on this question is it's important for people to think laterally instead of vertically. Don't be at all worried about change. Change can be difficult, but change can also be very rewarding, and it has been for me. So when opportunities come up, think about them as, oh, this is going to be difficult. Think about it as, hey, what's in it for me? What's in it for the people that I'm doing this work for, the public? And let's embrace it.
Yeah. Growth opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned a couple of those pivotal moments that shaped your trajectory. Geographic moves within an organization like Caltrans, which is really large. I think maybe the follow-up on this one is just if you're working for a large agency, perhaps be willing to stretch your wings out and do different things. Don't just feel like you just got to stay in your one area, especially if you're at a big agency where you have a lot of different options. Mm-hmm. You took advantage of a lot of those options. Yeah. So that's great. Now, we talked a little bit about Caltrans, but District 12, I think, is unique in that the County of Orange jurisdictional boundaries are the same as the Caltrans District 12. So that's a bit unique.
Yeah, and I'm biased. I was the district director in 12 for a better part of a decade. So you're absolutely correct. District 12 is the only single county district. All the other ones have 2 or 3 counties that go under them, sometimes maybe a little bit more. Only single county district in the entire state.
Okay, there's your fun fact for the day. We have a map here that shows a little bit of Orange County, but basically you can see the transportation system here, and all of the larger bolded roadways are either Caltrans type facilities or now with your agency. So at Caltrans, what types of projects or initiatives stand out the most from your time there? I know you did specialty assignments. You're obviously the district director. What do you remember from that time that How excited you?
Yeah, so I'm not sure all of them excited me, but the ones I remember most, and it might gear towards some of the ones that are more recent. So I've had an opportunity to work on some very large transportation projects. So here in Orange County, the 405 improvement project that OCTA was funding, it was to add one new general purpose lane or mixed flow lane and convert the HOV lane to express lanes, two express lanes in each direction on the 405 freeway for approximately 17 miles. Project wasn't easy, and the partners, Caltrans and OCTA, didn't always get along or didn't agree on which alternative should move forward. It's part of the sausage making. Shane, you know how this works. Oftentimes the state has said no, or there might be a different path or a different alternative to explore. And we had to go through those painful discussions with our partners at OCTA. At the end of the day, OCTA and their board of directors, with the leadership from the team over there, chose to move forward with an alternative that included express lanes. And that project is out now in operation and very successful. Fun fact on that one, and I'm certainly not the expert, it's an OCTA project, but my understanding is not only the express lanes operating and giving a reliable travel time in that corridor, but we always had messaged the public that all lanes should see some congestion relief and some time savings. And the data that we're seeing today, or OCTA is saying, certainly is proving that point. So whether you drive in the express lanes there or the general purpose lanes, you're seeing some mobility improvement with that project, which is what it was intended to do. So that's one key one. On the non-project side of things, I had an opportunity, and this is one of those, didn't come off as something that would be very fun, but learned an awful lot by doing it. When I was in Sacramento running their division of transportation planning, the first time I spent about 6 months to a year in Sacramento, an acting assignment, by the way, which I would encourage any young individual in their career to think about acting assignments when they can. I had an opportunity to work with Department of Finance and the Legislative Analyst's Office and the Governor's Office on zero-basing Caltrans' entire budget. The Transportation Planning Department was the first one to do it. Instead of budget building, which is you take what we have this year and you build off of it the next year, you adjust up and down, we completely started from scratch and zero-based everything. So that had to do with developing workload standards for what I call every widget that Caltrans did on the planning side. Really helped the team, all of the planners throughout the state, to understand the cost of doing business, the cost of delivering certain tasks, and then having to justify it to Department of Finance and the Legislative Analyst's Office was a heavy lift. Proved to be very successful, but it taught me an awful lot about budgeting and understanding the true cost of doing business. And then it really did help future budgets that we passed through the state. That was a really good opportunity, learning experience for me.
I recommend doing that at least every 3 to 5 years just to make sure you're on track with what's happening.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it also helps with your hiring plan, your staffing plans when you're putting those together. And you can't really have a good gauge of that unless you understand which widget and the workload standards that go into it, the entire process to deliver stuff.
And part of that is trying to have level of service and metrics to try to hit, to demonstrate the value. And if they can demonstrate the value to you, then you can demonstrate to the board.
100% correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I had a really good learning experience working in my time with Caltrans in leadership capacity, but with TCA and the toll roads here in Orange County. I wasn't in a leadership capacity here, but I was sitting on the boards of directors as an ex officio member of the TCA boards. And TCA was trying to push forward an extension to the 241. And on this map, if you look where the eastern 241 corridor is, where it ends at Osa Parkway, the Foothill Eastern Agency had a plan to connect all the way to I-5 in San Clemente, essentially going through the eastern part of the county in the southern section. And that was a mega project. I think it was a fantastic opportunity to improve mobility in the county. But there was a lot of opposition, and it wasn't a cheap project. Went through a decades-long planning process and environmental documentation. At the end of the day, the board of directors and the staff at TCA, along with Caltrans and their partners, chose not to move forward, and they chose to no build, which is pretty rare to spend that much money and time in looking at big mega projects to come up with, that's not what we're going to do. So I do commend prior leadership here and others that were working on that project to think about what else could we do. I think there was still a lot of merit in that project, and we'll see what happens with mobility in the south part of the county. But learned a lot from that it's okay to do the studies and let the traffic science help you decide and make those choices. It also proved a real big point, I think, to the public, is that agencies listen. So the reason why we have so much public engagement in delivering these projects is so we hear from everybody. Oftentimes the public thinks that agencies just ignore what they're talking about. That is not the case. And this is a pure example of where an agency did listen. It may have been a very difficult decision, but you can't say that agencies didn't listen when they eventually chose not to move forward with something like that. For better or for worse, definitely was a learning opportunity there. And the last thing I'll have to say is my time with the Department of Transportation, it's not always about building projects. It's not always about working on policy stuff. Caltrans, vast majority of their employees, and were my employees when I was there, is on the maintenance side of things. So about half of their workforce, they're on the sides of the roads, they're picking up trash, removing graffiti, helping to fill potholes. Much of that work happens at night. And I found that the public sometimes doesn't appreciate that level of effort that goes into just keeping our roads what they look like today. For those that have the opportunity to travel to other states or other countries, Southern California and California, our roads are in pretty darn good shape. And it's the people behind that, the maintenance employees, and also the engineers that are working on delivering those maintenance projects that are allowing that system to look like what it is.
Good point.
I think for me, the message is important that a lot of the work that Caltrans does happens while you sleep. At one point in my career over there, we talked about a campaign just saying while you were sleeping, and then start to identify what was done in a county or in a region while people were in bed. And the last thing I'll say is there's some laws on the books in California and other states that talk about moving over for emergency responders or for maintenance workers. Those are there for a reason. Luckily, in my tenure working for Caltrans in District 12, I never had a fatality. But shortly after I left here in Orange County, Caltrans did have a maintenance worker fatality. And it's a dangerous environment for people to work at. And if you've ever been standing on the side of the road or even had a flat tire on your car and had to change it, it can be very scary and very dangerous. Move over if you do see safety police officers and maintenance workers on the system.
Yeah, give them a break, right?
Yep.
Move over.
Yeah.
Before we shift from Caltrans to your role here, you can correct me on some of these stats. So you can see here we have the 405 corridor on this map. My understanding is that's the busiest transportation corridor in the country. I bring that up because it's unique here in the transportation system and what happens in Southern California. And people love to, especially right now, talk about gas prices, right? So you and I know that the federal gas tax hasn't been since 92, 93, 30 plus years. Mm-hmm. Any cost you have, if you didn't increase the revenue for that, the cost still goes up and the need goes up with that. But California has a couple extra layers of taxes in there because of the volumes of people we have using the roadways, and the federal tax is not going to come back in a way that helps sustain that. I don't know if you just want to touch on that real quick. It just came up because everybody's talking about gas prices right now.
Yeah, and I think about every 2 or 3 years, everybody talks about gas prices.
There you go.
It's just kind of one of those cyclical things in nature. You're absolutely correct. On the federal side, gas tax hasn't been adjusted in a long time, and it's not indexed for inflation. So every year that passes, we see inflation, our purchasing power goes down. That's the idea behind it. On top of that, we've got electric vehicles that are out there, alternate energy vehicles that are out there that don't buy gas tax, so they're not really paying in. In some states, they do. So in California, many years ago, SB1 was passed that indexed the gas tax and increased the gas tax, essentially playing catch up. And it was sold as we need this money to fix the roads that we have, to maintain the system we have. And when I was in Sacramento working as the chief deputy up there, one of the big policy items I had was Prop 6 was on the ballot, which was the repeal of gas tax. And Prop 69 was also on the same ballot when I was up there. That was to firewall. So transportation revenue can only be used for transportation purposes. You couldn't take it and augment the general fund, for example. Turned out Prop 69 passed, Prop 6 failed, SB1 stayed in place. And in California, we've been able to do really good things with that extra incremental difference in gas tax. That said, most of the funds that come into the Department of Transportation via the gas tax is to just maintain and operate the system. What the public may not know in California that's unique, I don't believe many other states have it structured this way. You'd be the better one to answer this question. But on the funds available to work on congestion relief, if you want to add capacity or the larger transportation projects beyond just operations and maintenance, we refer to it as the STIP, that the state of California only gets 25% of that pot of money. So we typically, the state will do that towards putting it towards interregional projects, some of the larger corridors in the Central Valley and the like. But the vast majority of the funding to make congestion relief projects come to fruition are handled by our regional partners in our counties. So in this case, Orange County Transportation Authority has 75% of that pot of money. At the same time, and this is overly technical, I understand that, a lot of counties in California are what we call self-help counties. They've actually taken the initiative in the past, Orange County in particular, and LA and many others, to try and pass a sales tax measure. In Orange County, it's a half cent. It's called Measure M. Measure M2 also passed subsequent to that. And that's an extra augmentation that allows Orange County Transportation Authority to move forward with projects like a 55 widening or the 4 or 5 improvements that you see out there today. If it wasn't for the local sales tax measures, Caltrans would still be maintaining a system that would have looked a lot smaller than what today.
Sure.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, transportation funding is a big issue all over the country, obviously, and you can see the layers in California, which is complicated. You've got the federal gas tax a piece, state gas tax another piece, and then you have these self-help counties with another piece of that. Shifting now from Caltrans to TCA, you mentioned how you came into the role through the board and working on the board as ex officio on the TCA board, and then coming in as the executive director, CEO. But do you want to just help people explain, like when we look at the map, there's a lot of crossover between state facilities and toll road facilities. So it's not like you're unfamiliar with all these roadways that you're now in charge of. Do you want to explain that transition?
Yeah, I'd love to try and unpack that a bit. I mentioned earlier, in my role as a Caltrans district director, I had the privilege of sitting on some local boards. So I sat on OCTA's board of directors, Metrolink board of directors, rail side. But I also had an opportunity to sit on both boards here at TCA, the San Joaquin Hills and the Foothills Eastern board. And I sat on the board for roughly 10 years. So I was very familiar with the initiatives that TCA had going on during that period of time. But what was very unique about the relationship with Caltrans and the toll roads or transportation corridor agencies here, and those words, those to describe our agencies, I use them interchangeably. The public understands us as the toll roads. The industry side of what I do, we're the transportation corridor agencies. So I just wanted to make that clear.
And you say agencies because there's kind of 2 corridors that the toll roads cover, right?
Yeah, you're exactly correct. And I'm not going to stand up, but if you look at everything that's in the center part of this map to the right side toward what would be the east side of the county, all of those facilities, the State Route 241, the 261, and the 133, those are all part of the Foothills Eastern Board of Directors. And then the 73, the corridor, the toll facility that we have on the western side of the county, that is the only corridor that the San Joaquin Hills Board of Directors makes decisions over. So that's how we're split into 2 different boards, 2 different joint powers agencies. So fun fact is we are a JPA. And so we do have some of the powers from our member city agencies, as you're aware of. And when we first got started, we mirrored a lot of the policies and procedures from the city of Irvine because they were one of the largest cities at the time when we were formed. But you asked about the relationship between my transition over here. Caltrans maintains all of the toll roads here in Orange County. So all the corridors I just mentioned, the beauty of this relationship is TCA and the visionaries early on when the roads were being contemplated knew that maintenance was going to be a huge cost. And there was some risk there that the revenue from the tolls wouldn't generate enough revenue to pay off the debt to build the structures, to build the facilities, and also continue to maintain them. And so that partnership, that public-public partnership, was Caltrans committed to maintaining these facilities for a period of time, where TCA went and sold non-recourse revenue bonds and set up a development impact fee program that would backstop paying back those bonds as well. And we sold those bonds. It was a very successful venture. The bonds sold out very quickly, and that gave us the seed money to start construction on the facilities that you see today. And TCA is continuing to pay off those bonds over a period of time. They're not paid off yet. We've got a long way to go. That's how these roads were financed and funded, and Caltrans has been maintaining those for a long time. So I was familiar with the maintenance side of it. I was familiar with how TCA funded the projects, and I had the privilege of sitting on the board when the elected officials were making decisions on business items for these agencies.
Interesting. I just wanted to touch on bonding real quick, not necessarily specific to TCA, but in the industry, sometimes people get nervous about that, right? External financing for an agency, and they think, if you can't pay for it now, why would you go try to leverage dollars? But what we're seeing, especially right now with the cost of inflation and the construction index increases, is that many agencies are able to bond for, let's say, half the percentage of what the costs are rising year over year. But it does take a bit of an innovative approach. And you guys were probably close to first to do that in the region. Now others are catching up.
Yeah, we've got a lot of firsts here at TCA, and very proud of this agency for having that sort of innovative and entrepreneurial spirit to get there. But adding on to what you said, not only that, is if you can use different type of innovative financing mechanisms and you can deliver projects sooner, we get those benefits out to the public quicker, maximizing the value that they see in your agencies and those improvements. Plus, construction costs have always gone up over time. It ebbs and flows, right? But if you were to deliver a project 10 years ago versus today, quite a bit cheaper. So if we can accelerate those, we can save a little bit of money on the back end by delivering the benefits earlier. One of the very fun things I had an opportunity to do and always intrigued me, and it was working in the pricing space, so road pricing. Even at Caltrans, was the first in the state to deliver a managed lane or a pricing study for the entire county. And it was very fun. And knowing that the transportation revenue that we have from the state and the federal side, there's some challenges there with the Highway Trust Fund, as we already talked about. So I was always intrigued with road pricing to be able to maintain and operate the system, but also to manage congestion, right? If we can try and manage a system so it never breaks down, you're never stopped in bumper to bumper traffic, we actually get so much more volume through a specific segment of a corridor if we just keep it from not breaking down. And so the transition here to TCA was wonderful and a fantastic opportunity for me to really work in this space. I didn't anticipate how much work goes behind having a very strong customer service center back office system. So you don't learn that working for another agency. When you're actually working for a toll operator, you know what those risks are and you know what those challenges are on the customer service side. Sure. And that was the space where I was a little less familiar with.
Yeah, you got familiar pretty quick, I imagine.
You have to.
And I think it's important for people to understand there's always a free option. And by allowing people to pay, that can actually reduce the congestion in the general purpose or free lanes also. So it's a little bit symbiotic there.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I'd like to double down on something you said, as long as it's a free option. Part of a trend that we're seeing with the current administration on the federal side is an aversion to what we call cordon pricing. So we saw that in New York, where you're pricing getting in and out of a certain zone and there's no free path in or out in a vehicle, in your own personal vehicle. Don't really have a strong choice there. In Orange County and almost all of the price systems beyond cordon pricing, there's a free alternative. Having choice is important. And it'd be a different discussion if it was a price system where there wasn't a choice for our customers to choose.
Yeah, I experience it in my commutes, right? So when I came here today, this is the toll road option from where I live. And if it was during the peak hour, I may have chosen this route, but I came off peak. So then I could use the free interstate systems to get to the same point.
And another fun fact is most of our transactions and most of our customer interaction, it's not every day. We do certainly have some power users that take the facility no matter what, but most of our customers are 1 to 2 times a week, not 5 days a week, 7 days a week, and twice a day.
So you have a full corridor option to take 100,000 vehicles off of the 405 in this case, which is the largest, busiest corridor in the country, at no cost to the taxpayer. That's a pretty good deal when you think about it like that. You're helping people in the free system and you're giving an option for folks that need more predictability.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The capital to build those projects, not a dollar state and federal funding on there. The limited state funding that is the maintenance. That's that partnership talked about. But the vast majority of the capital, and we're talking billions of dollars, not a single dime of state and federal funds to build these improvements.
Which then frees up those dollars to fund the rest of the system.
Absolutely right. Yeah, right. And the congestion relief that we're seeing from all the toll roads in Orange County is huge. You mentioned that.
Yeah. You're in a pseudo-public agency, which has some of the same restrictions, but your dollars are not tax dollars. They're fee-based revenue dollars. So how does that change the way you do the operation and give you some opportunity for innovation?
Yeah, you mentioned before, when you take federal dollars or state dollars, there are some strings that are attached to that. It tends to be a little bit more costly to deliver large transportation projects when you're doing it. There's more process, there's more procedures, it takes more time. On the state side, our facilities are state highways, so Caltrans typically is still what we call the lead agency for decision-making for project approvals or environmental compliance. We still have to do CEQA, for example.
CEQA is?
California Environmental Quality Act. So that's the state's broader environmental regulatory framework that all projects have to go through in the state of California. Our agencies are real strong advocates of trying to streamline the environmental process and having a state environmental regulatory framework replace what's being done on the federal side. So having some reciprocity there, if the state's framework is as robust, if not more than the federal side, let us just do the state and then streamline on the federal side. So the advantages is time and money. That's the short version. And then driving innovation with less controls by other agencies, we're able to take and think about risk a little bit differently. It's not taxpayers' dollars. Our agencies are doing really well with managing our financing and our funding. We are in a position now where we're cash funding all of our projects in our capital improvement plan program. And so that's kind of unique for our agency. So we've done a really good job of being good stewards of the funding we do have. That said, if there's an opportunity where the market proves that it'd be more beneficial to look at other funding opportunity and use the cash elsewhere, we have ability to do so. We probably won't in the near future, but that opportunity is out there. It also gives us some flexibility on where we put some of our revenue. So there are still some restrictions being a state highway. Entrepreneurial spirit here, if I can talk about that a little bit, agencies were already thinking innovatively and had that entrepreneurial spirit when we originally built the facilities. And I was very young at the time, used to ride my mountain bike when it was just the foothills to the east and started seeing the grading happen. So that's how young I was when these roads were being built. And we've never lost that entrepreneurial spirit. So thinking about how we can innovate on the financing side has carried forward even to today. So we're doing some really cool stuff with our back office, our partnerships. We're doing stuff with habitat restoration and rehabilitation and wildlife fencing, state-of-the-art wildlife fencing that avoids vehicle to animal collisions, things like that. And we're able to do that through a board that really allows staff to push a little bit more than a normal public agency can on innovation. It's very clear that we all need to understand the risks associated with those decisions. Not every idea is a great idea. Not every innovation is going to be successful. And when they're successful, we talk about it, we brag about it. And when they're not, we own it, we learn from it. And we actually sometimes celebrate some risks that materialized, didn't lead to what we expected. But we have to be able to celebrate our failures just as much as those successes to continue to foster innovation in an agency like this.
We talked a little bit earlier about pricing. You have ways to mitigate cost of services, but what are your other priorities or challenges?
Yeah, so I'd like to start on the priorities for the agencies currently, and I leaning into a little bit more about that entrepreneurial spirit. Our board of directors have empowered staff to really lean into what we call regional processing partnerships. And what we're doing is, and I'm very proud of what we have here from our back office system. So for the viewers, I'll try and keep this as high level as I can. So when you're driving a toll road, you go underneath these gantries and you see this equipment hanging from signs, and sometimes you'll hear a beep when you've got a transponder, or sometimes you don't. But those cameras and those sensors tell us, hey, this vehicle and this transponder went through the system. Send us that data to our back office, which is housed at a different location, and we process transactions accordingly. So that has to do with posting the time, the cost, pinging it to the account. It has to do with even registering new transponders and new vehicles, everything that has to do with the stuff that the public doesn't usually see as a back office. We recently transitioned and improved our back office, and it's very strong. And we knew it was strong, and when we were moving forward with those upgrades, prior leaders knew that there was an opportunity to scale. And just like in the private sector, there's a cost to stand up a back office, there's a cost to stand up a customer service center, but the more we scale up, the cheaper the cost per transaction can be, right? So this is no secret sauce here, a little bit unique for a public agency, a JPA, to do it. Private sector does this all the time. And so we've got a model we want to scale up. And so we've reached out. We're not actively marketing it, so to speak, but when other toll operators are looking at standing up a new back office or putting a new express lane system out there, raise our hand and say, hey, did you think about a public-public relationship? We've got a back office. Let's think about partnering. And we've seen some success there. So we are the back office for San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, SBCTA. And we're processing all of their transactions on the express lanes in that county. And we're also have a customer service center that's our contract employees out in the Rancho Cucamonga area. And that's our responsibility, and we're servicing SBCTA that way. Very successful. And so other agencies saw that. There's a new authority in the greater Sacramento area called the Capital Area Regional Transportation Authority, CARTA. And they're looking to build express lanes in the Sacramento area, and they've selected us to be their back office and customer service provider too. So again, scaling. And then more recently, probably more of a lesser known thing, our partners to the south in SANDAG, so the San Diego Association of Governments, they've got some toll facilities in San Diego County, and they were in the process of upgrading their back office. And we said, hey, have you thought about a public-private partnership? And so they took a look at what we have to offer, and they decided to go with us as well. What's in it for everybody else? It can be expensive to upgrade your back office or to stand up a new back office. We're talking millions of dollars, 5 to 20 million range. If we've already got one and we're just talking about paying for cost per transactions and talking about tweaking their business model, we can do that here. have a little bit a la carte service. So if somebody wants to have a different discount for something, we can do that. And that's a cost savings to our partner agencies, and it's cost savings to us, a win-win. So that's one of those big innovative things we're leaning into.
Yeah, just digging into that a little bit. Those are big metro areas you're talking about serving. And the systems required there, as you said, 20 million or whatever, plus the software or software as a service, subscriptions, all that stuff. Training up staff, having maybe brick and mortar space where you have to have people there on site doing all of that. You could have whole agencies just to deal with the tolls. Now you bring that through your group, trained up, doing maintenance on the software anyway. You can have consistency. The folks that you've trained can just multiply their transactions effectively without having to add many more people. I think that's really interesting. And I'm glad that other public agencies or pseudo-public agencies are considering that, because normally in the government world, you just only think in your jurisdiction. Like, we can never go outside the boundaries of our jurisdiction. And so this is a really interesting new age P3 public partnership. Right?
Yeah, again, fully agree. And I would say when you say going outside of our region, another big initiative that TCA is leaning into is what we call national interoperability. So for your viewers online that are seeing this, in California and in a lot of other states, if you have an account with a toll operator, you get your transponder or sticker, you put it on your window. In California, you can drive on any toll facility in the state of California. You can drive in the Bay Area if you're a TCA customer. You can go right through their toll gates, and that transaction gets processed seamlessly. BATA, the Bay Area Toll Authority, pings our system. We ended up debiting our customers' accounts, and then we remit payment back to BATA, and it is seamless. The user doesn't even really see much of that. That's interoperability in California. We're trying to lean in national interoperability, so allowing California toll users or account holders to be able to drive on the turnpike in Maine or New Hampshire or Florida and have that transaction be seamless as well. So if they have a rental car and they put it on an account in TCA and they're driving in Florida and they go through a toll facility there, it's processed to their account here at TCA and it's seamless. You don't have to go through finding out who you have to pay. If you happen to forget about it, you don't get these violation letters in the mail that say, hey, you need to go pay your $3.50 and worry about it. It's seamless. From our perspective, it's also a safety play, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can eliminate driver distraction, whether it's in the state of California or across the nation, why wouldn't we? To me, that just makes sense. Don't have them stare at signs trying to figure out what agency do they have to go log on and find and pay and how much. Just have it be seamless. So we are moving forward, trying to pass a bill in California, AB 334, with our author in Sacramento to try and allow us to share data with other states to make that possible. We're not the only ones thinking about it. This national structure has been around for a long time. California and the western U.S. states are a bit behind the curve. So the northeastern part of the U.S. and the southeastern and the central are a little bit farther along in that sharing of data and being able to process it. But one of the key players in this piece is California. We've got some of the most robust toll systems here, and we really need to be a part of that system.
To do that, you're heading to D.C. likely to try to advocate for national interoperability. And I've been there twice this year. There's a lot of noise. Have your visits gone? Have people been receptive? Have you found it a struggle to get the message through? Do they pick up quickly? What's your experience there?
Yeah, the legislative side wasn't my focus area at Caltrans, and in my career is more building projects, right? I've got fantastic federal advocates that we have here and state advocates, and we've got our the Director of Legislative Affairs, who's fantastic. But you're absolutely right. When we go to DC and it ends up being 2 or 3 times a year, we've been pounding the pavement, knocking on the doors, talking about interoperability. The federal government, many years ago, almost a decade ago, already had in, I think it might have been Safety Lou, Transportation Package, already said that states needed to be interoperable. So they support it already. What they didn't know is that there are some state regulatory issues that don't allow some information to be shared across state lines. And so we're messaging that on the federal side, and we've asked congressional members to continue to re-engage and state that they still support interoperability. And we've had successes this last year. So in the proposed transportation package that you are fully aware of, we've got some language in there that says interoperability is still supported and that data shared between states shall only be used for processing toll transactions. I emphasize that a little bit because in California, that's one of those sensitivities is what is that data being used for? Is it being used and shared with people that it's not for processing those transactions? So we're trying to put a backstop there on the federal side. And then in the THUD bill, appropriations bill, we've also got similar language that talks about federal government still wants interoperability and that toll procedural transactions should be for that purpose. So some successes there. We think that'll help on the state side to make sure that those members that are making decisions and going to vote on 334, hopefully this cycle, that this is widely accepted. This is a streamlining measure. It's a cost-saving measure, public safety measure, and we're sharing less personally identifiable information through this process than we do using the snail mail to collect violations through other states. So we're trying to get that message through, but it's complex, and we'll see where it goes.
A little side note on National Advocacy 101. The challenge is not the congressional legislators or representatives that represent your area or where you are. California is usually pretty progressive in trying to do things like this. It's you have to reach out, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. It depends on the committees they sit on, what their roles are, and trying to get your message across to somebody who might not be focused on it because they don't care what happens in California. They care what happens in Georgia or whatever. And trying to even get an audience where somebody's receptive to the idea, even if it's a good idea, which this is, can be very difficult just because of different priorities, different perspectives, different influences, whatever the case might be. So I think that's the challenge, is when people think, I'll just go to DC and work with my Congress member and do that. That's one of 535 members, and your Congress member might not be influential or positioned properly on the necessary committee, like the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee we're working with on this new bill, to even make a push for that productively. So you're running into some of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, I brag about the team here at TCA. I also brag about our federal advocates. Knowing who to talk to is essential in trying to find some success. My own personal experience, whether it's on the state legislative side or congressional, is really get to know the staffers. You need to have support from the members, but the staffers are there over a longer period of time. They know the history. You got to get them to buy into it, because you can say something to the member, and if the staffer doesn't support it as well, you can find some barriers there. But we've had some success. I'm very proud of where we're at so far.
Great. Yeah. Always important to advocate nationally for your issues in infrastructure and transportation.
Yeah. You asked what other initiatives, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about one transportation improvement that you've probably seen me raising my cup, and there's a sticker on the backside of this one.
Yeah, we are advocating a little bit here, getting the message out. Yeah.
But we've had a project that's been in the delivery pipeline for the better part of 10 to 15 years, and we call it the 241-91 Express Lane Connector. And I'm glad the map's behind us here.
Kind of up on the top there.
If you look way at the top where 241 meets the 91, you got it right there. If you have ever been in Orange County and you've driven on Thursday or Friday up the 241 north and then heading out towards Vegas or Palm Springs or the 91 eastbound, there's a queue that will line up approximately 3 to 5 miles in length, just transitioning from one state facility to the 91 corridor in the super peak period. And so our agency, the Federal Eastern specifically, are trying to move forward a project that is a separate connector that will take our toll facility customers that choose to build a new connector that drops right into the center of the State Route 91 express lanes. So you can go from a toll road straight into the express lanes seamlessly. You can still take a free option, right? You can take our toll road and then take the general purpose lanes to get on the 91 and take the general purpose lanes all the way out to the Inland Empire. Or you can choose to pay a new toll to take that connector. But I'm happy to say that project is currently advertised. It's about a $500 million project. So not cheap in any regards, and extremely complex. Part of why I think I'm here at TCA was to think about how we build better partnerships in this county. And I did have a good working relationship with OCTA, for example, and SCAG and Riverside County Transportation Commission as well. And in order to move a project like that forward, that's multi-county, right? Everybody that goes on our facility and goes on the 91 headed eastbound, they're going to end up in Riverside County, right? And what Riverside didn't want is to have us put more trips on the 91 freeway, put more trips on the 91 express lanes, pushing people faster down the east end of that corridor, only to exacerbate a problem on the east end with congestion and more travel time delay. So it took the better part of 10 to 15 years to get partners to agree that this is how we're going to operate it. That facility is going to be really unique. We're using pricing to manage demand, but we have a set amount of trips that we can drop in during the peak period on the 91 corridor and the express lanes. We're limited on that volume. And so if pricing can't manage that as a standalone, we think it can, but if it can't, we have some backstops. So we call this progressive demand management, where we use pricing first. If pricing isn't working and we're up at the upper tolerance of what we can drop in the 91 express lanes, then we go to a different mode. So if we're not able to manage below a set volume, then we'll transition to using a ramp meter. And after that, we transition to having it be carpoolers only, so 2 and 3+ people in a car. And if that doesn't work, we go to transit only, so bus and microtransit service. And that's how we intend to manage demand on that corridor to make sure we stay under that threshold that our partners needed us to stay under. But a big part of this and what's in it for our users and our customers and customers of OCTA and RCTC is there'll be a choice to have a seamless, efficient path all the way out to the Inland Empire from Central Orange County.
And there's mountains that go along the eastern, northeastern part of Orange County, so it's not like you can just take another route. There's a little 2-lane mountain road. So there's a lot of people funneled through there. A lot of people live there, work in Orange County, vice versa. So very important corridor. And a few years from now, people will be able to use that, I expect. Right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So project is advertised for construction now, which we're very happy about. Should start moving dirt sometime late this calendar year or early next. 3-year construction window. And so in 2029-ish, should be having people have a choice to be able to take that seamless path or not.
There you go. Another great innovation and partnership effort here at TCA. Doing a lot of great things at the agency, but you're also working in the industry outside of your regular day job. And do you want to talk to us a little bit about the California Transportation Foundation? You informed me about it and that I should look into it. You've been an advocate of that and what that effort is about. Can you explain that a little bit to us?
Yeah, I would love to. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about California Transportation Foundation. And you'll hear me say CTF. There's a lot of great organizations that do really good work for our industry and our space. CTF is really unique. The broader mission of CTF is to educate, recognize, and remember. So those 3 key components. On the education side, and I've been a product of CTF and their education programs, they do some things like taking undergrad and graduate students and bringing them for a 2 or 3 day education symposium where they pair them up with a mentor, such like yourself or me, where they're able to engage with professionals in our industry and our space, talk about what they like, what they don't like, their career path, how do they get to where they are, what do they like. But they also get immersed in what it's like to actually bid on a transportation job. So we have a program set up where they have to take a look at an RFP and put a package together and then go through an interviewing process with a bunch of professionals on a panel, just like consultants would do for a project sponsor or an agency such as TCA. So really giving them an opportunity to learn what it's like to be part of that business development side of working in the private sector, or what an owner or operator or constituent wants to see with a transportation project. I've met some really fantastic colleagues and some wonderful students that come through that are still in industry, and just helps with that health of the talent pool we have in transportation in the space. So that's the education side of things. They do other technology education symposiums and the like. I'd encourage your viewers to go ahead and take a look at their website and see. So the remember, and this is where it's a bit emotional to talk about, CTF really at its core is there for people when they need it most. So we talk about maintenance workers on the transportation system, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be somebody that works in the ports. It could be somebody that works for Amtrak or Metrolink or a county transportation agency. But if they have an employee that's injured or a fatality on the job, CTF has specific money set aside to help them and their families through those tough times. So one of the very few organizations that do that. And that's really its core. They also have scholarship opportunities for children of fallen workers. So that's one key opportunity. And they also have a lot of scholarship opportunities for just anybody that's thinking about getting in our transportation space. So really good, again, getting at the health of our industry. You and I aren't going to be around forever, right? Our time is limited. The older we get, we know that. Yeah. Part of our job as leaders is to make sure that our industry stays strong and we have people that can fill our shoes, not just one, but 5, 6, or 7 that can step in our roles. And CTF is working to get everybody there. And then the last thing is to recognize. So CTF has a very robust awards program where if you've got a project that you're very proud of, ours is the 241-91 Express Lane Connector like we talked about, but there are hundreds and hundreds every year that are moving into construction or get completed, and CTF goes through a nomination package just like other nonprofits do. I do sit on the board of directors at CTF, so for full disclosure there. And CTF is really generating all of its revenue from private donations, so whether it's you or me, or corporate donations and sponsorships at those events. For those that have any interest in it, please take a look at the website. It's the ctf.org.
Okay.
I would encourage you to at least take a look at the programs they have to offer. You don't have to sponsor or donate, but if you're in the transportation space and you think they can help, I would encourage you to get the word out that they're there.
That's great. We talk about workforce development a lot on the show here, and so that's another important asset of what you're doing with the time you have in the leadership role, so we appreciate that. As we look ahead, what are you thinking about from a trend standpoint for transportation in California or nationally, since you're working in those arenas? What are you thinking for the next phase of what we're going to go through here in the industry?
Yeah, I think people are waking up that as we have different types of vehicles out on our road that don't use gasoline, that we need to think about how do we still ensure that those vehicles are paying their fair share. So you already see it on the state side where there's additional fees associated with EV vehicles out there. And on the federal side, that's part of that conversation is what do we do with these and how do you help make sure they're paying their fair share on the federal side to help with the Highway Trust Fund. I think we'll see still more leaning into that. I don't think it's a comfortable conversation on the congressional side to talk about, but I think everybody knows we have to do something there. So that's
all users pay. That's what the standpoint is. That's the foundation.
And I think it's very fair. I think until we see some shoring up of the Highway Trust Fund, I think you're going to see states continue to lean into, we have to maintain what we already have. You already know if we're not doing our routine maintenance, the cost down the road is going to be exponentially higher to replace and rehabilitate what we have out there. So I think we'll still see a lot more of that. I think automation is one of the biggest disruptors that we are seeing and we're going to continue to see in our space. When I say automation, we've got driverless vehicles on the road today. There is plenty of research being done and demonstration and pilots of driverless freight vehicles as well. I think that will continue to move forward and be a very clear disruptor in our space. There's some really positives that I see, right? As we have an aging population, you and I aren't getting any younger. I think it's really helping with continuing to have people have their mobility as they enter into their senior years. But with that comes challenges, right? Those vehicles that operate on them on their own or have little interaction with the driver, they have to prove themselves that they are much safer than what we have today, similar to the airline industry, right? And I think that's a heavy lift for OEMs and manufacturers to overcome, but I think they'll get there. And I'm looking forward to it. What that does with our system, does it mean more vehicle miles are being traveled with driverless vehicles and automation, or does it mean less? Does it mean car ownership is the same as it is today? It's just different and people are renting out their own vehicles for that use, or they're choosing not to buy vehicles. I think that's something that's a bit unknown at this point in time. So I think that's one of those things I'm looking forward to seeing how that matures. And then on the way farther down the road, I'm very personally interested in air mobility. So eVTOLs, electric vehicle takeoff and landing vehicles. You're seeing 2 or 3 very prominent companies start to show up in that space and get through the FAA's testing. That essentially will allow people to drive to a hub in their local city or community, hop in one of these air vertical landing takeoff vehicles that are essentially like big drones and drive you to LAX or get you to the Great Park or San Diego. They're quieter than a normal helicopter, EV. They have safety features that are much more robust than what you would normally think. And what that does and whether that actually materializes into widespread use, I'm very interested in that. What it can do also, if more people are choosing air mobility as a way to travel, there's less wear and tear on the road in the system that we're paying to maintain. So there could be an advantage there. I'm very interested in what that space looks like, but it's all about how do we more efficiently move people, goods, and services. And I think certainly, if not the rest of our lives and our career, we're going to see some huge disruption and change. But certainly my son and daughter are going to see a lot of change when it comes to how mobility moves forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. One thing I've been considering on eVTOL, personal drones, is that likely the regulation or the restrictions on that are going to have those personal drones still potentially use the transportation corridors, right? Because the right-of-way, the public right-of-way goes all the way up versus flying over somebody's property because of safety issues, privacy, all of that, so that your transportation corridors are still going to be needed even if you're going vertical.
Yeah, fully agree. I think that's probably where they'll land, but that's out of my area of discretion.
For now, but maybe the toll roads will pick it up as a pilot. We don't know.
Yeah.
That's great. Anything we missed today, Ryan, that you wanted to chat about further? That we should have touched on?
If I can just close with, if there are those that are just starting their career that are looking at your podcast, and I'm sure your audience is very wide, I'd like to emphasize that your career and advancing your career doesn't happen just because you're there, right? You have to really work hard to make it happen. It's not easy to do that. And we mentioned some things like being mobile, taking different opportunities in different parts of the state or the US when you're young. But I also think taking opportunities like an acting assignment, or if it's with the same company that you started with, they're asking you to do something new. I'd encourage your audience, for those that are younger in their career, to embrace that and really think of it as, this is going to make me more diverse, more knowledgeable, more marketable. And it might find something that hits your passion bucket differently, and you want to wholesale just lean into it. Take those opportunities when you can. Don't shy away from them. They can be challenging, can be scary, but I wouldn't be here today if I didn't take those opportunities. I'd also say, find mentors. Find people that you can go to and say, hey, have you ever done this before? Or what do you think about this space? And they'll be lifelong friends of yours over time. And then certainly work very hard on soft skills. In academia, we're taught this is how you do a calculation. This is how you write a thesis paper or an article in a science journal. Very few times, unless you're a communications major, do you have an engineer or a transportation planner take a communications course. And very rarely do they talk about the soft skills, understanding that people's body language is more telling than the words they're saying, right? Asking more questions, avoiding things like, you said this, I'm receiving this. Those little things can really help break down barriers. Those are skill sets that take practice to learn. Really try and focus on supervisory training, management training, and leadership training when they're offered to you, or even if they're not. The next generations have so much information out there just on the web. Learn on your own, because you want to be prepared for the interview that you're going to take, that you're going to have next year and 3 years from now. So be a lifelong learner. And then the last thing I will say, from the moment you walk into a room to meet somebody new, make sure that they know you're there. You don't have to be boastful, just have a smile, a firm handshake, be sincere so they remember that you're in the room. And then when you leave, even if you're talking really difficult things, leave on a high note. Celebrate some success, thank people for their time, smile, tell them you can't wait to see them next. Those are leaving on a high note, and that you'll leave a mark, and they'll remember it, and that'll help your career in the long term. So I'll end with that.
Great points. And your $500 million project, that doesn't happen without some communication, soft skills, as you said, over that period of time. So good closing lesson there. And with that, Ryan, thanks for being on our show today. Really appreciate your time.
Well, Shane, really appreciate you.
Yeah, one of the best we have here in Orange County. Thank you for watching this special episode of the Public Works Podcast, and we'll see you next time.